Okay, 8th grade. So today's going to look a little bit differently because we're not using the whiteboard today. I need to fix a couple things with the whiteboard to try to fix some of the issues we've been having. So we're just going to look at the PDF of the packet together. So today we're going to be on page 38 and 39 of the packet. We'll do 38 together, and then you guys will do 39 on your own. Just like every other day. Hopefully all of this isn't too much and you guys can see it okay. I think maybe that'll help a little bit. So today we're going to be looking at denotation and connotation. So we've been talking a lot about like context clues and understanding the definitions of words. So denotation and connotation are kind of not, they have to do with like the meaning of words and the feeling that is associated with words. So how words make us feel, or what's the first thing that we think of when we hear that word. So if we look at the top there, it says words can have two kinds of meanings that convey very different ideas or images. A word's denotation is its basic meaning or dictionary definition. So that's kind of what we're trying to look for when we are using context clues, is we're trying to determine the word's basic meaning or its denotation. So the denotation is just the formal word for its basic meaning or dictionary definition. What does the word actually mean? And then a word's connotation is the feeling or impression that people associate with the word. So a connotation is whether the word is viewed positively, negatively, or neutral. And positive would obviously be good, negative would be not good, and neutral would just kind of be like there's not really a good or a bad feeling associated with it. So, when you are writing, you should think about the connotations of words you choose and the effect that they'll have on readers. So it's going to break down a few examples, two from each, so two positive, two neutral, and two negative. So let's take a look at those here. For positive connotation, it says several people lingered in the theater after auditions, and my aunt picked me up in her compact two-door car. So all of these are saying the same thing, but based on the word that you have, it changes how you might interpret the sentence. So when it says compact car, compact is just a type of car, a nice car, nothing wrong with it, so it leaves a positive connotation. Lingered is kind of like people are enjoying themselves, they're hanging around, right? So it leaves a positive connotation and a positive understanding of what's happening. Now the neutral connotation would be if you said several people stayed in the theaters after auditions, or my aunt picked me up in her small two-door car. Small, just telling us the size. It's not saying that it's bad. It's not saying that it's good. It's just saying the size. Stayed, again, doesn't say that they stayed too long. Doesn't say that they didn't stay long enough. It just says that they stayed. So if you look at the negative connotation, several people loitered in the theater after auditions, and my aunt picked me up in her cramped two-door car. So when you say loitered, a lot of people don't know what that means. Loitered is like you're hanging around too long, like you're not supposed to be hanging around there. So that would have a negative connotation. It would generally mean a bad thing, like people were not supposed to be there, but they were staying anyway. Cramped means that you're kind of uncomfortable. You're too many people in a space. Small doesn't necessarily say that. It's just saying the size, whereas cramped says it was too small. So that is how connotations can lead us to not so much that it changes what's actually happening in the sentence, but we can tell the writer's opinion on that based on the words that we're using. So let's take a look at this guided practice here at the bottom. My text is going to look a little bit different than yours because when I'm typing in here, it changes the text. So it says, read each sentence. Each underlined word has a neutral or a positive connotation. So initially, they all have a neutral or positive connotation. And then what we're going to do is we're going to write a word that has a negative connotation to replace each underlined word. And obviously, we don't want to change the meaning of the sentence, just the how the sentence is perceived by other people. So it says, hint, words that have the same or a similar denotation, which again, denotation is just the actual meaning of the word or the dictionary definition of the word, are synonyms. You can use, with synonyms, again, we talked about these before, synonyms are words that mean the same thing. So you can use a thesaurus, which is similar to a dictionary, to find the synonyms for each underlined word, then choose and write the synonym that has a negative connotation. So it says, the first one, it was adventurous of me to try out for the role of villain. So adventurous typically means outgoing in a good way, or it could have possibly some risks, but that those risks lead to positive reward. And we want to change adventurous to something that might be perceived negatively, then we could use that word risky. So we could say, it was risky of me to try out for the role of villain. So the second one here, mine is going to look a little bit differently than yours because when I start to type on it, it changes the text a little bit, which kind of sucks, but that's just what we're working with today. So it says, I'm quiet and shy, but the character is powerful. Now, one thing I didn't touch on that I want to touch on really quickly is that we're not looking for words that mean the opposite of the underlined word, which the underlined word in this one, I should have said, is powerful. It just took it off on mine, but if you have your packet, which you should, then you would be able to see that. Well, it's going to underline the whole thing there, but we'll work with that. But the word is powerful that we're looking at. But you're not looking for a word that means the opposite. You're looking for a synonym that means the same thing, but that people would take in a more negative way, or take in a way that would mean that what is happening there is not good. So we're not looking for the opposite of powerful. So we wouldn't put like weak. We would put something that would be taken more negatively. So another word we could use for powerful could be like bossy or commanding, things like that. So we see that this means the same thing. Powerful can mean the same thing, but typically we take bossy and commanding in a more positive light than we would, or in a more negative light than we would powerful. So the next one says, my best friend was surprised that I was so firm in my decision. So here, the denotation of firm, or just like the regular meaning of firm, is just that they were like solid, or they had already decided their decision. They weren't really going to change from that decision. So now we want to look for a word that is more of a negative term for firm. We could say something like unrelenting for the word firm, which usually when you say anything with un or dis or anything like that, it's going to come off in a negative way because it seems like, oh no, that's not good, I'm not doing that, that sort of thing. So like unrelenting would mean that they're not like listening to the other person, they're not taking other people's opinions into play. So you could also say like uncompromising, which compromising is to like listen to other people's opinions. So if they're not willing to compromise, they're not willing to listen to the other person's opinion, which would mean basically the same thing as firm here. So it says, I nervously held the script as I read my first lines. So here we have held. This one seems kind of like how would you come up with a negative word for held, but there is several ways that we could come up with for this. So we could say they held it, they're holding on to it. Something that would make it seem negative, you could say gripped, because it seems like they're holding on to it really, really hard because they're really nervous. Yeah, this one's not too complicated. That's just pretty much what we would leave it at. So the next one says, my right leg shook as I faced the hero. Shook is just more of a neutral word, not necessarily a negative word, but a word that we could use. Obviously their leg is shaking because they're kind of nervous, but shook doesn't necessarily immediately give us that negative connotation, but something like, if I could spell it right, that'd be good, trembled, would bring that negative thing, because if you say trembled, you automatically know that someone is kind of nervous or is having a hard time with something. When you say trembled, you like immediately know that. Another one would be like quaked, that sort of thing, because quake is typically taken to be more of a negative word. So the next one says, when offered the part, I deliberated for a while. The denotation of deliberate just means they like thought about it for a while, and they spent a lot of time thinking about their decision. So we want to try to use one word. I can think of a couple like phrases that we could use. So a word we could use that means the same thing but is more negative could be speculated. So they speculated for a while. Typically when you hear the word speculate, it's like someone speculating something about you. They're thinking of like something negative about you. So speculated could be taken in more of a negative way than deliberated. So the number 7 says, but then I decided that I had spent too much time being shy. Spent is very neutral, doesn't give us that negative or positive sort of view, just kind of neutral there. So they had spent too much time being shy. Another word that means the same thing could be like wasted. Typically when you waste something, you were not using it for good. You weren't giving it the amount of attention that it needed possibly, or you were giving it too much attention more so. So that would be a negative word for number 7. And again, you can come up with more than one if that gives you a little bit more. We don't all have to come up with the same answers for these types of things. So sometimes I wonder what kind of silliness I'll try next. So silliness here is just kind of they're doing something different. Maybe it was a little bit silly. I would say this one has more of a positive connotation than a neutral connotation, because sometimes when you say a kid's being silly, maybe they were doing something that was kind of crazy or not normal, that sort of thing. So there's multiple we could come up with this. We could say what foolishness I'll get into next. I wonder what kind of senselessness I'll get into next. Craziness, that sort of thing. So all of these have more of a negative. Silly is usually like, haha, they're so silly. Whereas you say like stupid or foolish, all of those things have more of a negative sort of connotation. But they all really mean the same thing. So now, hopefully, that made sense to you guys. Now you guys are going to do 39 on your own, which just asks you to take a look at what words have a negative connotation and then which words have more of a positive connotation. So again, we need to remember, I know we didn't talk too much about denotation because that's kind of self-explanatory. With context clues, we spent a lot of time with denotation. So now connotation, again, is what feeling or impression that the word is giving you. So I want you guys to do page 39 for today. And if you have any questions on this, I will be available for office hours. But if you can't reach me during office hours, you are more than welcome to contact me outside of those. I just can't guarantee I'll get with you immediately. But if you guys don't have any questions, I hope you have a great weekend. Make sure that you send me your pages completed in the packet by tomorrow, probably before like 3 or 4 in the afternoon. That way I can get you marked as participating for the week. So I'll be in office hours if you need me. If not, I will see you guys back on Tuesday.